Why does humanity claim to seek truth, yet choose comfort instead? Why is doubt seen as dangerous while lies are tolerated? Why do societies trust believers rather than thinkers? Why does the human being say they want truth, yet choose comfort instead? This contradiction is not hypocrisy, it is survival. The human mind is not built to live inside constant uncertainty. Truth is demanding. Truth removes excuses, it forces responsibility. It asks the individual to confront what is uncomfortable, unfair, and unresolved. Comfort does the opposite. Comfort simplifies, comfort reassures. Comfort allows the mind to rest from doubt. When a person says they want truth, what they often mean is that they want a truth that does not disturb their identity, belonging, or emotional safety. Real truth rarely offers that. It disrupts beliefs, questions loyalties, and exposes fragility. Human history shows that people admire truth in theory, but resist it in practice because truth demands change. Change requires effort, and effort creates anxiety. Comfort requires only acceptance. The brain is an energy-saving system. It avoids cognitive strain whenever possible. Deep thinking consumes mental resources. It creates inner conflict. It forces the individual to choose without guarantees. Comfort removes that burden by providing ready-made answers. When belief systems offer certainty, they eliminate the exhausting work of thinking. This feels like relief. In a complex and threatening world, relief becomes more valuable than accuracy. This is why humans often defend comforting falsehoods more fiercely than uncomfortable facts. They are not protecting lies, they are protecting emotional stability. Truth destabilizes inner narratives. People do not just believe ideas, they live inside them. Those ideas define who they are, where they belong, and what gives their life meaning. When truth threatens those foundations, it feels like a personal attack. Comfort preserves identity. Truth risks dismantling it. This is why humans say they value truth, but instinctively choose comfort when forced to decide. The choice is emotional before it is rational. The nervous system seeks safety before understanding. This pattern repeats across history and across individuals. When societies are stable, truth can be explored. When societies feel threatened, comfort dominates. This is not weakness, it is human design. But this design comes with a cost. Progress slows, illusions harden, and reality is postponed rather than confronted. The tragedy is that comfort feels like peace, but it is temporary. It delays conflict rather than resolving it. Yet humans continue to choose it because immediate relief feels more real than long-term clarity. This is why the desire for truth is often sincere but shallow. It exists until truth demands sacrifice, and the moment sacrifice appears, comfort quietly replaces conviction. Why is doubt considered dangerous while lies are tolerated? This question exposes the core fear that societies carry beneath their structures. Doubt is dangerous because it opens space, and space invites choice. When a person doubts, they stop accepting inherited answers and begin evaluating them. That evaluation threatens stability because stability depends on shared certainty. A lie, on the other hand, can be shared. A lie can unify. A lie can preserve order even when it distorts reality. Societies are not primarily built on truth. They are built on coordination. For coordination to work, people must agree on a common story. Doubt fractures that agreement. It does not replace one story with another. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty spreads faster than lies. When one person doubts, others begin to wonder. When others wonder, authority weakens. This is why doubt feels contagious and uncontrollable. A lie can be managed. It can be repeated, reinforced, and defended. Doubt cannot. It leads to questions, and questions do not stop where power wants them to stop. Lies are tolerated because they stabilize emotion. They reduce anxiety by offering clear explanations, even if they are false. Doubt increases anxiety by removing explanation without immediately replacing it. The human mind finds this state unbearable. When people doubt, they feel exposed. They lose the comfort of knowing where they stand. Societies interpret this discomfort as danger, not because doubt is wrong, but because it destabilizes collective behavior. A tolerated lie keeps people moving in the same direction. A tolerated lie maintains obedience. A tolerated lie preserves hierarchy. Doubt does the opposite. It encourages comparison, disagreement, and independent judgment. These qualities are valuable for truth, but disastrous for fragile order. This is why history repeatedly shows lies being protected while doubt is punished. Not because lies are harmless, but because they are useful. They can be weaponized. They can be aligned with power. Doubt cannot. It belongs to the individual, and power cannot easily control individuals who think independently. This creates a paradox. Lies are morally wrong, but socially convenient. Doubt is intellectually honest, but socially disruptive. Societies choose convenience over honesty because convenience keeps systems functioning. When a lie supports the structure, it is forgiven. When doubt threatens the structure, it is condemned. This moral inversion teaches people to fear questioning more than deception. Over time, this fear becomes internalized. People learn to tolerate lies as long as they feel safe and to reject doubt even when it is justified. The result is a culture where truth becomes secondary to comfort and stability. This is why doubt is framed as dangerous. It is not dangerous to reality. It is dangerous to control. And this is why lies endure. They do not challenge power. They serve it. And as long as societies value order over understanding, they will continue to fear doubt more than falsehood. This video does not judge people, belief, or thinking. It does not try to decide who is right and who is wrong. It is not here to praise one side and condemn the other. This video does not label believers as ignorant, nor thinkers as superior. Its purpose is not to deliver verdicts, but to understand processes. It tries to understand why humans seek comfort, why doubt feels threatening, and why people often say they want truth, but retreat when truth becomes heavy. It explores how beliefs emerge, why they hold societies together, and why independent thought is so often treated as danger. This video does not present faith as an enemy, nor reason as a savior. It looks at human psychology, fear, the need for stability, and the choices humanity has repeated throughout history. The goal is not to change anyone, but to explain why change is difficult. This video does not offer answers because answers are comforting. This video asks questions because questions lead to understanding. The central question is this: why do societies place their trust in those who believe rather than those who think? This question cuts to the core of how communities survive, maintain order, and protect themselves from uncertainty. Belief offers predictability. Thinking introduces variability. Believers repeat what is known. Thinkers explore what is unknown. Societies value reliability over exploration because reliability maintains coordination. When people believe the same thing, they act together. When people think independently, they diverge. Divergence threatens unity, and unity has always been more valuable to collective survival than truth. Believers reinforce shared narratives. They stabilize identity. They reassure the group that the world makes sense. Thinkers question those narratives. They introduce alternatives. They expose contradictions. This makes them unpredictable. Unpredictability is dangerous in systems built on shared certainty. This is why societies instinctively trust belief over thought. Not because belief is more accurate, but because it is more controllable. Belief aligns behavior, thinking complicates it, and when stability is prioritized over understanding, trust naturally flows toward those who preserve the story rather than those who challenge it. Doubt equals question, and question equals uncertainty. And this chain explains why doubt has always been feared across history. Doubt begins the moment an answer stops feeling complete. When a person doubts, they are not denying reality. They are suspending acceptance. This suspension creates space between what is claimed and what is known. That space is uncertainty. Uncertainty is not neutral to the human mind. It activates anxiety because the brain is designed to predict and prepare, not to remain undecided. When certainty disappears, the nervous system interprets it as danger. This is why doubt feels uncomfortable even before it becomes intellectual. Doubt forces the mind to operate without guarantees. It removes the safety of final answers and replaces them with possibility. Possibility means choice, and choice means responsibility. This is the first reason doubt is threatening. It transfers responsibility from authority to the individual. Once a person doubts, they can no longer hide behind inherited answers. They must evaluate, decide, and accept the consequences of being wrong. Uncertainty also disrupts emotional stability. Certainty allows people to organize their lives, values, and expectations around fixed assumptions. When those assumptions are questioned, identity begins to shake. People do not merely believe ideas, they build themselves around them. When doubt enters, it threatens not just opinions, but the structure of the self. This makes doubt feel like an existential risk rather than a mental exercise. A question seems small, but its implications are not. A single question can unravel entire systems because it demands justification. Justification requires explanation, and explanation exposes weaknesses. This is why doubt spreads. It does not stay contained. Once someone asks why, others begin to ask why as well. Doubt is contagious because it invites participation. Unlike belief, which closes inquiry, doubt opens it. This openness is dangerous for systems that rely on closure. Closure creates order, uncertainty creates motion. Societies fear motion because motion disrupts coordination. For a group to function efficiently, its members must share assumptions. Shared assumptions reduce friction. When doubt appears, friction increases. People begin to disagree. Disagreement slows decision-making and weakens unity. In early and fragile societies, this could mean death. This historical memory remains embedded in social instincts. Doubt is therefore treated as threat rather than tool. Uncertainty also exposes ignorance. Certainty allows people to feel knowledgeable even when they are not. Doubt reveals limits, and limits are uncomfortable. Humans prefer the illusion of understanding to the admission of not knowing. This preference is not moral, it is psychological. Uncertainty creates cognitive strain. The brain must hold multiple possibilities at once, compare them, and delay resolution. This consumes energy. In contrast, certainty allows the mind to rest. When belief provides answers, doubt becomes unnecessary effort. This is why people often avoid questions that do not promise immediate resolution. Doubt also undermines authority. Authority depends on trust, and trust depends on confidence. When leaders, systems, or traditions are doubted, their legitimacy weakens. This is why doubt is often framed as disloyalty rather than curiosity. By moralizing doubt, societies protect power structures. If doubt were accepted as neutral, authority would need to justify itself constantly. This is inefficient and destabilizing. It is easier to declare questions dangerous than to answer them. Uncertainty also has no clear endpoint. A lie can be corrected or replaced with another lie. Belief can be reinforced through repetition. Doubt has no natural conclusion. It continues until evidence or meaning satisfies it, and sometimes nothing does. This open-endedness is intolerable for systems that require closure. This is why doubt is associated with chaos, even though it is the foundation of understanding. Historically, doubt has driven progress, but socially it has threatened cohesion. This contradiction explains its treatment. Doubt produces knowledge over time, but disorder in the moment. Societies prioritize immediate stability over long-term insight. This is why uncertainty is feared. It delays action. It complicates obedience. It weakens narratives that hold groups together. Yet without doubt, learning stops. Error persists. Falsehoods harden. Truth becomes irrelevant. This creates a paradox. Doubt is dangerous to order, but essential to understanding. Uncertainty feels like weakness, but it is the space where knowledge grows. The human condition is trapped between these needs. We need certainty to function, but doubt to evolve. This is why doubt is suppressed when survival feels fragile, and tolerated when stability increases. The equation remains consistent. Doubt leads to questions. Questions lead to uncertainty. Uncertainty threatens comfort, identity, and control. The human brain reacts to uncertainty as if it were a threat because its primary function is not to seek truth, but to ensure survival. When the brain encounters uncertainty, it cannot predict outcomes, and prediction is the foundation of safety. From an evolutionary perspective, an unpredictable environment meant danger. Uncertainty signaled that the brain could not prepare the body for what was coming. This immediately activates stress responses. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, responds faster than rational analysis. It does not ask whether the uncertainty is intellectual or physical. It treats both as risk. Once activated, it triggers anxiety, increased heart rate, and heightened alertness. This happens before conscious thought. The body reacts first, and only afterward does the mind try to explain what it feels. This is why uncertainty feels uncomfortable, even when nothing bad is happening. The brain interprets not knowing as loss of control, and loss of control is deeply threatening. The prefrontal cortex, which handles reasoning and long-term planning, works slowly and requires mental energy. It can tolerate uncertainty only when the emotional centers are calm. But when uncertainty is high, the emotional brain overwhelms rational processing. This reduces the ability to think clearly. People under uncertainty seek fast resolution, even if that resolution is false. This is why simple answers feel attractive under stress. The brain prefers a wrong certainty to an unresolved question, because certainty allows it to stop scanning for danger. Uncertainty keeps the brain in a state of vigilance. Vigilance is exhausting. When uncertainty persists, the brain looks for patterns, explanations, or authority to restore predictability. This is where belief systems become powerful. They offer narratives that close uncertainty and calm the nervous system. Once an explanation is accepted, stress decreases, even if the explanation is incorrect. The relief is real. This conditions the brain to associate certainty with safety and questioning with discomfort. Over time, the brain learns to avoid uncertainty proactively. People feel resistance toward questions that do not promise closure. This resistance is not intellectual, it is emotional. Uncertainty also threatens identity. The brain builds a stable sense of self by maintaining consistent beliefs about the world and one's place in it. When uncertainty challenges those beliefs, the brain experiences cognitive dissonance. This dissonance is perceived as internal conflict. The brain resolves conflict by rejecting new information rather than restructuring identity. This is why people often dismiss facts that contradict their worldview. Uncertainty would require rebuilding mental models, and rebuilding is costly. The brain chooses conservation over accuracy. Additionally, uncertainty disrupts social belonging. Humans are wired for group survival. The brain monitors social acceptance as closely as physical safety. When uncertainty leads to questioning shared beliefs, it risks social exclusion. The brain registers this risk as danger because exclusion historically meant death. This social threat activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. As a result, the brain discourages doubt when doubt could isolate the individual. This makes conformity feel safe and independent, thinking feel risky. Uncertainty also delays action. The brain prefers clear directives because action requires commitment. When outcomes are uncertain, action feels risky. Indecision creates stress because the brain is stuck between options. This is why people often follow authority under uncertainty. Authority provides direction. Direction reduces cognitive load. The brain relaxes when responsibility is transferred elsewhere. This explains why humans gravitate toward leaders, ideologies, and systems that claim certainty during crises. Uncertainty forces the brain to hold multiple possibilities simultaneously. This working memory load is mentally taxing. Most people cannot sustain it for long. This leads to simplification. Complex questions are reduced to slogans. Nuanced truths are replaced by absolute claims. This simplification is not stupidity. It is neurological efficiency. The brain seeks to minimize effort while maximizing perceived safety. All these mechanisms create a powerful bias against uncertainty. Doubt keeps the brain alert, stressed, and unsettled. Certainty calms it, even when that certainty is artificial. This is why uncertainty feels dangerous at a visceral level. It is not just the absence of knowledge, it is the absence of psychological safety. This explains why humans instinctively resist doubt, why they cling to comforting explanations, and why societies often punish those who introduce uncertainty. The brain is not defending truth, it is defending equilibrium. And as long as uncertainty disrupts that equilibrium, the brain will treat it not as an opportunity for understanding, but as a threat that must be resolved, avoided, or silenced. Doubt creates psychological pain because it places the human mind in a state it is not designed to tolerate for long. The brain evolved to reduce uncertainty, not to remain inside it. When doubt appears, it suspends certainty without immediately replacing it. This suspension creates cognitive tension. The mind is forced to hold competing possibilities at the same time, and this generates stress because the brain prefers closure over openness. Doubt removes clear orientation. When a person doubts, they no longer know what to trust, how to act, or where they stand. This loss of orientation is experienced as discomfort because predictability is tied to emotional safety. The nervous system reacts to doubt as if something essential has been taken away. That reaction is not abstract, it is visceral. The body responds with anxiety, tightness, restlessness, and mental fatigue. Doubt also produces psychological pain because it undermines identity. People do not only believe ideas, they build their sense of self around them. Beliefs define values, belonging, morality, and purpose. When doubt enters, it threatens these foundations. The mind interprets this threat as an attack on the self, not just on an idea. Losing a belief can feel like losing a part of one's identity. This creates grief, confusion, and fear. Doubt forces the individual to confront the possibility that they may have been wrong. Being wrong is not just an intellectual error. It carries emotional consequences. It threatens self-esteem, competence, and trust in one's own judgment. The brain resists this threat by generating discomfort. The pain of doubt acts as a warning signal, encouraging the person to return to certainty as quickly as possible. Doubt also creates responsibility. Once certainty is gone, the individual must decide for themselves. There is no authority to hide behind, no final answer to rely on. This responsibility is heavy. Many people find it easier to obey than to choose. Doubt removes the comfort of delegation and places the burden of decision-making entirely on the individual. That burden creates anxiety because choices have consequences, and consequences cannot be guaranteed. doubt also isolates. When someone doubts shared beliefs, they risk social separation. Humans are deeply social beings. The brain treats social belonging as a survival need. When doubt distances a person from the group, the brain interprets this as danger. This activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. This is why disagreement can feel painful and why questioning collective beliefs produces emotional distress. Doubt also lacks immediate reward. Certainty provides relief. Doubt provides no closure. It can persist indefinitely without resolution. The mind prefers problems that can be solved. Doubt often cannot be solved quickly. This prolonged uncertainty exhausts mental resources and increases stress. Humans are not comfortable living without narrative resolution. Stories with clear endings feel satisfying. Doubt keeps the story open-ended, and open-endedness creates psychological strain. The brain constantly seeks patterns and explanations. Doubt interrupts this process. It signals that the pattern is incomplete or broken. This interruption feels like friction inside the mind. That friction is experienced as pain. Doubt also exposes vulnerability. It reveals how little control humans truly have over reality. This realization is unsettling because belief systems often protect people from confronting helplessness. Doubt strips away that protection and exposes raw uncertainty about life, death, meaning, and future. This exposure is emotionally painful because it forces the individual to face existential insecurity without reassurance. The brain responds by attempting to escape doubt through denial, rationalization, or submission to authority. This is why people often experience doubt not as curiosity, but as suffering. It feels like something is wrong, even when nothing is objectively wrong. The pain of doubt is therefore not a flaw in human thinking. It is a psychological mechanism. It pushes the mind towards stability, certainty, and coherence. Doubt hurts because it destabilizes the systems that keep the psyche functional. It challenges identity, belonging, control, and meaning all at once. That combination is overwhelming. This is why humans instinctively avoid doubt, why societies discourage it, and why comforting answers are often chosen over unsettling truths. Doubt opens the door to understanding, but the cost of walking through that door is psychological pain, and most people are not willing to endure that pain unless certainty has already failed them. Doubt affects the individual on a deep psychological level because it disrupts the inner structures that give a person stability, orientation, and a sense of self. At the individual level, doubt is not experienced as a neutral intellectual exercise. It is felt as inner tension. When a person doubts, they lose the feeling of standing on solid ground. Beliefs act like mental anchors. They tell the individual who they are, what they value, where they belong, and what they can expect from the world. When doubt appears, those anchors loosen. The individual begins to feel unsteady, as if something familiar has shifted. This creates anxiety because the mind no longer knows which assumptions are safe to rely on. Doubt forces a person to confront ambiguity, and ambiguity requires constant mental effort. The individual must now think actively instead of resting inside accepted answers. This effort is exhausting over time and can lead to mental fatigue, overthinking, and emotional strain. Doubt also increases self-awareness. When beliefs are unquestioned, the individual acts automatically. Once doubt enters, every action requires reflection. Reflection slows life down. It creates hesitation. Hesitation can feel like weakness or loss of confidence. This loss of confidence is painful because humans associate certainty with competence. When a person doubts, they may begin to question their own judgment. This self-questioning can spiral into insecurity and fear of making mistakes. Doubt also isolates the individual internally. Even before social consequences appear, the person feels separated from their former self. They may feel that they no longer fit comfortably inside their previous worldview. This internal separation can feel lonely because the person is no longer aligned with what once felt natural and safe. At the same time, doubt creates emotional conflict. The individual may still want to believe, but can no longer do so honestly. This tension between desire and conviction produces inner discomfort and guilt. People may feel disloyal to their family, culture, or identity simply for thinking differently. This guilt intensifies psychological pain. Doubt also increases responsibility. Once inherited answers no longer work, the individual must build their own understanding. This means accepting uncertainty without guarantees. Many people experience this as overwhelming because it removes the safety net of authority. There is no longer someone else to blame if things go wrong. This burden can lead to stress, avoidance, or retreat back into belief. Doubt can also disrupt motivation. Beliefs often provide purpose and direction. When they weaken, the individual may experience emptiness or loss of meaning. Actions that once felt justified may now feel arbitrary. This can lead to apathy or existential anxiety, especially if new meaning has not yet formed. However, doubt also has a transformative effect. When endured, doubt sharpens perception. It forces the individual to examine assumptions, distinguish between inherited ideas and personal convictions, and develop intellectual independence. This process is painful, but it can lead to deeper self-understanding. Doubt breaks automatic living and replaces it with conscious choice. But this benefit comes later, not immediately. In the short term, doubt feels like loss rather than growth. This timing matters because many individuals abandon doubt before reaching its constructive stage. They return to certainty simply to stop the discomfort. In this way, doubt acts as a psychological threshold. It tests how much uncertainty an individual can tolerate. An individual who passes through doubt often emerges more autonomous and self-aware. An individual who retreats learns to prioritize comfort over understanding. This is why doubt shapes individuals so powerfully. It is not just a question of knowledge, it is a test of emotional endurance. Doubt hurts because it dismantles familiar mental structures before new ones are ready to replace them. And at the individual level, that period of dismantling feels like vulnerability, confusion, and pain long before it feels like growth. A lie creates stability not because it reflects reality, but because it reduces uncertainty. Stability is not built on truth alone. It is built on predictability, and lies can be highly predictable. When a lie is accepted collectively, it functions like an agreed-upon map. Even if the map is inaccurate, people know what to expect, how to behave, and what is required of them. This predictability calms the nervous system and allows coordinated action. At the psychological level, a lie simplifies complexity. Truth is often nuanced, contradictory, and uncomfortable. A lie compresses that complexity into a clear narrative. Clear narratives are easier to live inside. They provide answers without requiring constant reevaluation. When people accept a lie, they stop questioning. This cessation of questioning creates mental rest. Mental rest feels like stability. Lies also stabilize identity. They tell people who they are, who belongs, and who does not. Shared lies become shared identities. When individuals see themselves reflected in the same story, they feel connected. Connection reduces anxiety because isolation is perceived as danger. In this way, a lie can bind people together more effectively than truth, especially when truth threatens to divide opinions. A lie also stabilizes authority. Authority depends on legitimacy, and legitimacy depends on belief. When a system promotes a lie that supports its structure, it protects itself from scrutiny. As long as the lie is maintained, authority does not need to justify itself repeatedly. This reduces friction between power and the population. Friction destabilizes systems. Lies smooth that friction by offering simple explanations that discourage resistance. Lies also stabilize emotion. They often promise safety, hope, or moral clarity. They explain suffering in ways that feel meaningful or temporary. Even when these explanations are false, they reduce despair. Reduced despair leads to social calm. Social calm is interpreted as stability. From a behavioral perspective, a lie can coordinate action more efficiently than truth. If everyone believes the same false assumption, they will still act in alignment. Alignment is more important for short-term stability than accuracy. Truth that leads to disagreement weakens coordination. Lies that produce agreement strengthen it. This is why societies sometimes tolerate or even protect lies that maintain order. Lies also resist change. Change creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates stress. A stable lie freezes reality into a familiar shape. People can build routines, traditions, and expectations around it. These structures persist even when the lie is known subconsciously. This creates inertia. Inertia feels like stability because nothing appears to move or threaten the system. The cost of this stability is delayed rather than immediate. Lies accumulate pressure beneath the surface. Errors go uncorrected. Problems are postponed rather than solved. But in the short term, the absence of conflict is mistaken for health. This illusion is powerful because humans are sensitive to immediate discomfort and less sensitive to long-term risk. A lie removes immediate discomfort. Truth often introduces it. This is why lies feel stabilizing. They act like psychological sedatives. They dull awareness of contradiction and soften emotional shock. They keep systems functioning when honesty would require painful change. But this stability is conditional. It depends on continued suppression of doubt. Once doubt becomes widespread, the stabilizing effect of the lie collapses rapidly. This collapse feels sudden, but it is the result of long-maintained artificial calm. In this way, lies do create stability, but it is a borrowed stability, one taken from the future and used to buy peace in the present. And societies repeatedly choose this trade because immediate stability feels safer than uncertain truth. The familiar wrong feels safer than the unknown truth because familiarity creates psychological comfort, while the unknown activates fear. The human mind is wired to prefer what it recognizes over what it must confront for the first time. A familiar wrong is predictable. Even when it is false, it allows the brain to anticipate outcomes, adjust expectations, and feel oriented. Predictability reduces anxiety because the brain's primary goal is not accuracy, but survival. An unknown truth, by contrast, removes that predictability. It forces the individual into uncertainty where outcomes cannot be anticipated and existing mental models no longer apply. This lack of orientation is experienced as threat. The brain treats the unknown as danger because throughout evolutionary history, what was unknown often was dangerous. This reaction persists even when the threat is intellectual rather than physical. A familiar wrong also protects identity. People build their sense of self, belonging, and meaning around shared narratives. Even if those narratives are incorrect, they feel stable because they are woven into daily life, relationships, and memory. Accepting an unknown truth may require dismantling those narratives. This feels like losing part of oneself. The mind resists this loss by clinging to what is already integrated. The familiar wrong does not demand transformation. The unknown truth does. Transformation requires effort, emotional resilience, and the willingness to accept being wrong. Being wrong is painful because it threatens self-esteem and competence. The familiar wrong allows the individual to feel consistent and justified. The unknown truth introduces doubt about past choices, beliefs, and loyalties. This retrospective threat is heavy because it forces people to reevaluate not only what they believe now, but who they have been. The brain prefers continuity over correction because continuity preserves psychological stability. A familiar wrong also preserves social harmony. Shared falsehoods bind groups together. They create common ground. When everyone agrees on the same wrong idea, coordination remains intact. The unknown truth, however, divides. It introduces disagreement, debate, and choice. Choice fractures unity because not everyone will respond the same way. Societies value unity because unity reduces conflict and increases collective security. This makes the familiar wrong socially advantageous, even when it is intellectually flawed. On an emotional level, the familiar wrong often comes with stories, rituals, and justifications that soften reality. It explains suffering in comforting ways. It provides moral clarity. It offers simple answers. These emotional benefits make it easier to endure life. The unknown truth rarely offers immediate comfort. It often reveals complexity, ambiguity, and unresolved tension. This emotional cost discourages acceptance. The brain is sensitive to immediate emotional consequences and less sensitive to long-term benefits. This bias pushes individuals toward what feels safe now, rather than what may be more accurate later. The familiar wrong also reduces responsibility. When answers are already given, the individual does not need to decide. They follow. The unknown truth transfers responsibility back to the individual. Once truth is recognized, action becomes necessary. Action carries risk. Risk generates anxiety. The familiar wrong avoids this chain by allowing passivity. Passivity feels restful. The mind interprets rest as safety. This is why people often defend beliefs they secretly doubt. They are defending the comfort those beliefs provide, not their accuracy. The unknown truth threatens that comfort by exposing gaps and demanding response. At a deeper level, the familiar wrong offers emotional shelter. It creates a psychological home where things make sense, even if that sense is constructed. The unknown truth feels like exile. It removes the shelter before offering a new one. This period of exposure is emotionally painful. Many people choose to remain inside a familiar illusion rather than endure that exposure. This choice is rarely conscious. It is automatic, driven by fear, avoidance, and comfort seeking. Over time, this preference becomes habit. Habit becomes conviction, and conviction disguises fear as certainty. This is why the familiar wrong so often triumphs over the unknown truth. Not because humans love lies, but because they fear uncertainty, because stability feels like safety, and because the mind is built to protect itself first, even at the cost of understanding reality more fully. A lie provides emotional comfort because it acts as a psychological shield against anxiety, fear, and inner conflict. The human mind seeks emotional equilibrium more urgently than factual accuracy, and lies often serve that need better than truth. Truth can be destabilizing because it introduces uncertainty, forces responsibility, and exposes vulnerability. A lie softens these pressures by offering a clear, contained narrative. When a person accepts a lie, they gain immediate relief from doubt. That relief is real at the emotional level, even if the belief is false. The brain responds to perceived certainty by reducing stress responses. Heart rate slows, mental tension decreases, and anxiety subsides. This conditioning teaches the mind to associate lies with calm and truth with discomfort. Over time, this association becomes automatic. Lies also protect self-image. Many truths threaten how people see themselves. They reveal mistakes, complicity, or powerlessness. Accepting such truths can damage self-esteem and produce shame. A lie allows the individual to maintain a positive identity without confrontation. It reframes failure as fate, loss as purpose, and injustice as necessity. This reframing reduces emotional pain by making negative experiences feel meaningful or justified. The emotional comfort comes not from accuracy, but from coherence. When experiences fit into a story, the mind relaxes. Lies are especially effective at providing simple stories. Simple stories reduce cognitive load. They require less mental effort to process and less emotional energy to sustain. This simplicity feels comforting in a complex world where truth is often fragmented and contradictory. Lies also regulate fear. Fear thrives in ambiguity. A lie closes ambiguity by explaining what happened and what will happen next. Even a false prediction feels safer than no prediction at all. This is why people cling to comforting narratives during crises. They are not seeking truth, they are seeking emotional containment. Lies function like psychological anesthesia. They do not heal the wound, but they dull the pain enough to keep functioning. Socially, lies provide comfort by preserving belonging. Shared lies create shared emotional reality. When individuals accept the same falsehood, they feel aligned and supported. This alignment reduces loneliness and fear of exclusion. Belonging itself is emotionally regulating. The brain treats social acceptance as safety. When a lie is widely shared, questioning it risks isolation. The emotional comfort of belonging outweighs the discomfort of inaccuracy. This is why people often defend collective lies, even when they privately doubt them. They are defending emotional security, not ignorance. Lies also postpone grief. Some truths require mourning. The loss of meaning, the collapse of hope, or the recognition of injustice can trigger deep emotional pain. A lie delays that grief by denying or reframing loss. This delay feels like relief, even though the grief remains unresolved. The mind prefers postponement to confrontation, because confrontation demands emotional processing that is exhausting. Lies give the illusion that processing is unnecessary. This illusion allows people to move forward without integrating pain. But the cost is accumulation. Unprocessed emotions do not disappear. They are stored beneath the lie. The emotional comfort provided by lies is therefore temporary, but it is immediate, and immediacy matters to the nervous system. The brain prioritizes short-term relief over long-term resolution. Lies also offer moral comfort. They divide the world into clear categories of good and evil, us and them, right and wrong. Moral clarity reduces anxiety because it removes ambiguity about how to feel and act. Truth often complicates morality. It reveals mixed motives, shared responsibility, and unresolved tension. This complexity is emotionally heavy. A lie simplifies morality and makes emotional responses easier. This ease feels like relief. At a deeper level, lies protect against existential fear. They answer questions about meaning, justice, and purpose in ways that reassure rather than disturb. Even when these answers cannot be proven, they reduce existential anxiety. The fear of meaninglessness is one of the deepest human fears. Lies often promise that suffering has a reason, that loss is temporary, or that justice will come. This promise soothes existential distress. The mind accepts the promise because the alternative is unbearable uncertainty. This is why lies persist even in the presence of evidence. Their emotional function outweighs their factual weakness. Lies are not maintained because people love deception. They are maintained because people need emotional rest. In a world that constantly threatens identity, belonging, and control, lies offer a place to breathe. They create a sense of safety where truth feels sharp and demanding. This emotional comfort explains why lies are tolerated, protected, and repeated. It also explains why challenging lies provokes defensive reactions. People are not defending. In ancient societies, doubt was equated with disobedience because survival depended on unity, not understanding. Early communities lived under constant threat from nature, scarcity, and rival groups. In such conditions, coordinated behavior was essential. For coordination to work, shared beliefs had to be accepted without hesitation. Doubt disrupted this process. When someone questioned a belief, ritual, or command, they were not seen as seeking truth, but as weakening the group. The act of questioning introduced delay, choice, and disagreement. All three were dangerous in environments where fast collective response meant survival. Obedience ensured predictability. Predictability ensured safety. This made obedience a moral virtue and doubt a social threat. In ancient belief systems, authority was often tied to the divine. Rulers, elders, or priests claimed legitimacy, not through evidence but through sacred connection. Questioning them was therefore not only a social offense, but a spiritual one. Doubt was framed as rebellion against the gods themselves. This framing made disobedience morally intolerable rather than merely inconvenient. By equating doubt with sacrilege, societies discouraged questioning at the deepest psychological level. Fear of divine punishment reinforced social conformity. This system was effective because it aligned cosmic order with social order. To obey authority was to obey the universe. To doubt authority was to invite chaos. The individual who doubted was not seen as thoughtful, but as dangerous. A single question could unravel rituals, norms, and power structures that held the group together. In small, fragile societies, this unraveling could mean collapse. This historical context explains why ancient cultures punished doubt harshly. Questioners were exiled, silenced, or killed not because their ideas were wrong, but because their behavior threatened cohesion. The goal was not truth preservation, but order preservation. Doubt created unpredictability, and unpredictability was synonymous with danger. In these societies, knowledge was not democratized. It was controlled and transmitted through tradition. Tradition relied on repetition, not evaluation. Doubt interrupted repetition and therefore threatened continuity. This made obedience the highest social value. Children were taught to accept, not to question. This conditioning ensured stability across generations. Over time, doubt became psychologically associated with guilt and fear. Individuals learned to suppress questions before they reached consciousness. This internalization of obedience made external enforcement easier. In this way, ancient societies did not simply punish doubt, they trained people to fear it. Doubt became synonymous with isolation, shame, and death. While this suppression limited intellectual progress, it ensured short-term survival. This trade-off shaped human history. Deep questioning emerged only when societies became stable enough to tolerate disagreement. Until then, doubt was treated as disobedience because obedience kept people alive. The ancient equation was simple. Unity meant survival. Doubt threatened unity. Therefore, doubt was rebellion, and rebellion in a fragile world was unforgivable. In religious systems, doubt is moralized as sin because belief is not only a personal conviction, but the foundation of order, identity, and authority. Religion emerged in environments where uncertainty was overwhelming and explanations were scarce. To survive psychologically, humans needed fixed answers that could not be questioned. Once belief became the source of meaning, law, and social cohesion, questioning it became dangerous. Doubt was no longer a neutral mental act. It was reframed as moral failure. By defining doubt as sin, religious systems transformed intellectual uncertainty into ethical wrongdoing. This move was strategic because moral emotions are stronger than intellectual arguments. Fear of punishment, guilt, and shame suppress doubt more effectively than debate. When doubt is labeled sinful, the individual does not merely question an idea. They feel they are betraying something sacred. This creates internal conflict. People learn to police their own thoughts. stopping questions before they form. This internal censorship is more powerful than external force. Religious systems rely on certainty to function. Rituals, commandments, and hierarchies depend on unquestioned acceptance. If doubt were allowed openly, belief would fragment into interpretation. Interpretation weakens centralized authority. By declaring doubt sinful, religion preserves uniformity. Uniform belief enables coordinated behavior and predictable morality. This predictability stabilizes communities. In early societies, stability was more valuable than accuracy. Doubt threatened that stability by introducing ambiguity. Ambiguity creates disagreement. Disagreement creates division. Division weakens the group. This chain made doubt intolerable. To prevent it, religious systems fused belief with virtue and doubt with corruption. Once belief becomes synonymous with goodness, doubt becomes synonymous with danger. The doubter is not merely wrong, but morally flawed. This framing justifies punishment because it protects the community from contamination. Historically, doubt was associated with chaos, heresy, and divine wrath. Religious narratives warned that questioning sacred truth would bring disaster. These stories conditioned fear at a deep emotional level. The individual learns that doubt invites punishment, not only from society, but from the universe itself. This cosmic threat amplifies control. Believers internalize surveillance. They believe their thoughts are observed by a higher power. This belief discourages private doubt as much as public questioning. The mind becomes a controlled space. This is why religious doubt often produces intense guilt. People feel they are failing not just a doctrine, but existence itself. Religious systems also link doubt to temptation. Doubt is portrayed as weakness, pride, or moral corruption. This framing shifts responsibility away from the belief system and onto the individual. If someone doubts, it is not because the belief is insufficient, but because the person is flawed. This protects the system from self-examination. The system remains pure. The individual bears the burden. This dynamic discourages reform and preserves tradition. Another reason doubt is sin is that faith is valued as surrender. Religious belief often requires submission to divine will. Questioning that will is framed as arrogance. To doubt is to place human reason above divine authority. This inversion threatens the hierarchy at the heart of religion. By condemning doubt, religion asserts that obedience is superior to understanding. This reinforces power structures and maintains control. Religious systems also use doubt as a boundary marker. Belief defines who belongs. Doubt threatens belonging. By moralizing doubt, religion creates clear insiders and outsiders. This clarity strengthens group identity. Identity increases loyalty. Loyalty protects the system. Those who doubt are labeled heretics, apostates, or sinners. These labels justify exclusion. Exclusion deters others from following the same path. In this way, doubt is not only suppressed but stigmatized. The fear of isolation reinforces conformity. Over time, this produces cultures where questioning feels dangerous even without punishment. The conditioning becomes self-sustaining. Doubt triggers anxiety automatically. This anxiety is interpreted as spiritual warning rather than psychological response. The individual mistakes emotional discomfort for moral error. This confusion keeps belief intact even when evidence accumulates against it. From the perspective of survival, this system worked. It preserved order and meaning in uncertain worlds. But it came at a cost. Intellectual stagnation and fear of inquiry became embedded in moral frameworks. When societies grew more stable and knowledge expanded, this moralization of doubt clashed with emerging reason. The conflict between faith and inquiry intensified because doubt could no longer be contained as sin. But the legacy remains. Even today, many people experience doubt not as curiosity, but as guilt. The figure of the questioner has been treated as dangerous throughout history because questioning does not merely seek information, it threatens structure. The person who asks questions interrupts certainty, and certainty is the foundation upon which authority, tradition, and social order rest. In historical societies, the questioner was not seen as curious but as destabilizing. They were perceived as someone who loosens the bolts holding reality together. When someone asks why, this implies that existing answers may be insufficient. That implication alone is enough to create fear. The questioner exposes the possibility that rules are constructed, not sacred, that exposure weakens obedience. In systems built on unquestioned acceptance, the act of questioning is interpreted as defiance. This is why the questioner becomes a threat before any answer is given. The danger lies not in what they conclude, but in the process they initiate. History shows a repeated pattern in the fate of those who question. First comes suspicion. The questioner is labeled restless, arrogant, or morally unreliable. This framing isolates them socially. Next comes delegitimization. Their motives are attacked. They are accused of corruption, ego, or hidden agendas. This shifts focus away from their questions and onto their character. If this fails, authority escalates to punishment. The form varies by era, but the logic remains consistent. The questioner is silenced, exiled, imprisoned, or executed. This is not done primarily to stop one individual, but to send a message to others. The punishment serves as warning. Questioning is costly. The goal is deterrence. History repeatedly shows that societies punish questioners not when they are wrong, but when they are persuasive. The more effectively a question spreads, the harsher the response. When questioning begins to resonate, it threatens collective belief. This is when tolerance ends. The pattern continues with mythologization. After punishment, the questioner is remembered selectively. They are either erased entirely or reframed as dangerous fools. In some cases, they are later celebrated, but only after the system they threatened has weakened or collapsed. This delayed recognition allows society to preserve order in the present while claiming wisdom in retrospect. This creates a paradox. Societies depend on questioners for progress, but punish them to preserve stability. The historical model is consistent across cultures and eras. Questioning first triggers fear. Fear triggers control. Control escalates to violence. The individual is sacrificed to protect the collective narrative. This cycle repeats because questioning destabilizes power. Power responds reflexively. This does not mean all societies consciously hate truth. It means they prioritize survival as they define it. In fragile systems, survival equals unity. Unity requires shared belief. Shared belief cannot tolerate persistent questioning. This is why the questioner is framed as a traitor rather than a thinker. A traitor threatens from within. They are more dangerous than external enemies. External threats unite groups. Internal doubt divides them. This internal division is perceived as existential. The fate of questioners follows a predictable arc. They begin as observers. They become critics. They are labeled threats. They are punished. They are forgotten or sanitized. This model explains why questioning has always been rare and costly. It also explains why those who do question often do so at great personal risk. The danger is not that questions destroy society. The danger is that they reveal how much of society is built on agreement rather than truth. History punishes the questioner not because questions are wrong, but because they work. They expose the fragility of certainty. And systems built on fragile certainty will always treat the one who asks why as their most dangerous enemy. The figure of the questioner has been treated as dangerous throughout history because questioning does not merely seek information, it threatens structure. The person who asks questions interrupts certainty. and certainty is the foundation upon which authority, tradition, and social order rest. In historical societies, the questioner was not seen as curious but as destabilizing. They were perceived as someone who loosens the bolts holding reality together. When someone asks why, this implies that existing answers may be insufficient. That implication alone is enough to create fear. The questioner exposes the possibility that rules are constructed, not sacred, that exposure weakens obedience. In systems built on unquestioned acceptance, the act of questioning is interpreted as defiance. This is why the questioner becomes a threat before any answer is given. The danger lies not in what they conclude, but in the process they initiate. History shows a repeated pattern in the fate of those who question. First comes suspicion. The questioner is labeled restless, arrogant, or morally unreliable. This framing isolates them socially. Next comes delegitimization. Their motives are attacked. They are accused of corruption, ego, or hidden agendas. This shifts focus away from their questions and onto their character. If this fails, authority escalates to punishment. The form varies by era, but the logic remains consistent. The questioner is silenced, exiled, imprisoned, or executed. This is not done primarily to stop one individual, but to send a message to others. The punishment serves as warning. Questioning is costly. The goal is deterrence. History repeatedly shows that societies punish questioners not when they are wrong, but when they are persuasive. The more effectively a question spreads, the harsher the response. When questioning begins to resonate, it threatens collective belief. This is when tolerance ends. The pattern continues with mythologization. After punishment, the questioner is remembered selectively. They are either erased entirely or reframed as dangerous fools. In some cases, they are later celebrated, but only after the system they threatened has weakened or collapsed. This delayed recognition allows society to preserve order in the present while claiming wisdom in retrospect. This creates a paradox. Societies depend on questioners for progress, but punish them to preserve stability. The historical model is consistent across cultures and eras. Questioning first triggers fear. Fear triggers control. Control escalates to violence. The individual is sacrificed to protect the collective narrative. This cycle repeats because questioning destabilizes power. Power responds reflexively. This does not mean all societies consciously hate truth. It means they prioritize survival as they define it. In fragile systems, survival equals unity. Unity requires shared belief. Shared belief cannot tolerate persistent questioning. This is why the questioner is framed as a traitor rather than a thinker. A traitor threatens from within. They are more dangerous than external enemies. External threats unite groups. Internal doubt divides them. This internal division is perceived as existential. The fate of questioners follows a predictable arc. They begin as observers. They become critics. They are labeled threats. They are punished. They are forgotten or sanitized. This model explains why questioning has always been rare and costly. It also explains why those who do question often do so at great personal risk. The danger is not that questions destroy society. The danger is that they reveal how much of society is built on agreement rather than truth. History punishes the questioner not because questions are wrong, but because they work. They expose the fragility of certainty. And systems built on fragile certainty will always treat the one who asks why as their most dangerous enemy. Truth is a heavy burden because it removes protection rather than offering comfort. Unlike lies or beliefs, truth does not adapt itself to human emotional limits. It does not soften consequences or consider readiness. When a person accepts truth, they also accept responsibility. Truth demands change. If something is true, then continuing to act as before becomes a choice rather than ignorance. That choice carries moral and psychological weight. This is why truth feels heavy. It forces accountability. Belief allows delegation. Truth removes it. When truth is acknowledged, there is no authority left to blame. The individual must carry the consequences of knowing. Truth also dismantles illusions that people rely on to endure life. Many comforting narratives exist to protect the mind from fear, loss, and meaninglessness. Truth often strips those narratives away. It reveals uncertainty, randomness, and limitation. This exposure creates existential anxiety because it confronts humans with how little control they truly have. The weight of truth is not just informational, it is emotional. Truth can fracture identity. People build their sense of self around assumptions about the world, their past, and their purpose. When truth contradicts those assumptions, it threatens identity itself. Accepting truth may mean admitting that one's sacrifices were misplaced, that loyalties were exploited, or that beliefs were inherited without question. This realization can produce grief and regret. Grief is heavy because it involves mourning not just what was lost, but what never truly existed. Truth also isolates. When an individual accepts an uncomfortable truth, they may find themselves separated from those who still rely on comforting falsehoods. This social distance is painful because humans are wired for belonging. The truth teller often loses community, support, and shared language. This isolation adds to the burden of truth. It is easier to carry a lie together than a truth alone. Truth also lacks closure. Many truths do not come with solutions. They reveal problems without resolving them. This open-endedness is exhausting. The human mind prefers stories with conclusions. Truth often leaves questions unanswered. This prolongs uncertainty and emotional strain. Unlike belief, truth does not promise meaning. It only offers accuracy. Meaning must be built afterward, and building meaning takes time and effort. This makes truth feel incomplete and demanding. Truth also resists simplification. It is often complex, nuanced, and contradictory. This complexity requires sustained attention and cognitive effort. The brain prefers simplicity because it conserves energy. Truth demands mental work, reflection, and revision. These processes are tiring over long periods. This cognitive fatigue contributes to the sense that truth is heavy. Additionally, truth removes excuses. Once truth is known, inaction becomes a moral decision. People cannot hide behind ignorance anymore. This moral exposure creates pressure. Many prefer not to know because knowing forces them to confront who they are and what they are willing to tolerate. Truth also threatens power. Power thrives on controlled narratives. When truth spreads, it destabilizes hierarchies. This makes truth dangerous not only to individuals, but to systems. Those who accept truth may face resistance, conflict, or punishment. This risk adds fear to the burden. Truth is heavy because it demands courage without guaranteeing reward. It offers clarity but no comfort. It reveals reality but does not help carry it. This is why humans often admire truth abstractly but avoid it personally. They praise it as an ideal while choosing comfort in practice. The weight of truth lies in its honesty. It does not lie to protect. It does not adapt to fear. It simply is, and carrying reality as it is, without illusion, without guarantee, without shelter, is one of the heaviest tasks the human mind can face. Truth is a heavy burden because it removes protection rather than offering comfort. Unlike lies or beliefs, truth does not adapt itself to human emotional limits. It does not soften consequences or consider readiness. When a person accepts truth, they also accept responsibility. Truth demands change. If something is true, then continuing to act as before becomes a choice rather than ignorance. That choice carries moral and psychological weight. This is why truth feels heavy. It forces accountability. Belief allows delegation. Truth removes it. When truth is acknowledged, there is no authority left to blame. The individual must carry the consequences of knowing. Truth also dismantles illusions that people rely on to endure life. Many comforting narratives exist to protect the mind from fear, loss, and meaninglessness. Truth often strips those narratives away. It reveals uncertainty, randomness, and limitation. This exposure creates existential anxiety because it confronts humans with how little control they truly have. The weight of truth is not just informational, it is emotional. Truth can fracture identity. People build their sense of self around assumptions about the world, their past, and their purpose. When truth contradicts those assumptions, it threatens identity itself. Accepting truth may mean admitting that one's sacrifices were misplaced, that loyalties were exploited, or that beliefs were inherited without question. This realization can produce grief and regret. Grief is heavy because it involves mourning not just what was lost, but what never truly existed. Truth also isolates. When an individual accepts an uncomfortable truth, they may find themselves separated from those who still rely on comforting falsehoods. This social distance is painful because humans are wired for belonging. The truth teller often loses community, support, and shared language. This isolation adds to the burden of truth. It is easier to carry a lie together than a truth alone. Truth also lacks closure. Many truths do not come with solutions. They reveal problems without resolving them. This open-endedness is exhausting. The human mind prefers stories with conclusions. Truth often leaves questions unanswered. This prolongs uncertainty and emotional strain. Unlike belief, truth does not promise meaning. It only offers accuracy. Meaning must be built afterward, and building meaning takes time and effort. This makes truth feel incomplete and demanding. Truth also resists simplification. It is often complex, nuanced, and contradictory. This complexity requires sustained attention and cognitive effort. The brain prefers simplicity because it conserves energy. Truth demands mental work, reflection, and revision. These processes are tiring over long periods. This cognitive fatigue contributes to the sense that truth is heavy. Additionally, truth removes excuses. Once truth is known, inaction becomes a moral decision. People cannot hide behind ignorance anymore. This moral exposure creates pressure. Many prefer not to know because knowing forces them to confront who they are and what they are willing to tolerate. Truth also threatens power. Power thrives on controlled narratives. When truth spreads, it destabilizes hierarchies. This makes truth dangerous not only to individuals, but to systems. Those who accept truth may face resistance, conflict, or punishment. This risk adds fear to the burden. Truth is heavy because it demands courage without guaranteeing reward. It offers clarity but no comfort. It reveals reality but does not help carry it. This is why humans often admire truth abstractly but avoid it personally. They praise it as an ideal while choosing comfort in practice. The weight of truth lies in its honesty. It does not lie to protect. It does not adapt to fear. It simply is, and carrying reality as it is, without illusion, without guarantee, without shelter, is one of the heaviest tasks the human mind can face. Comfort works immediately because the human brain is designed to reduce effort and restore equilibrium as fast as possible. The brain's primary objective is not understanding, but efficiency. From an evolutionary perspective, energy was scarce. Survival depended on conserving it. Thinking deeply consumes large amounts of mental energy. It requires attention, working memory, comparison, uncertainty tolerance, and emotional regulation. All of these processes activate the prefrontal cortex, which is metabolically expensive. The brain therefore developed an energy-saving mechanism. It automatically seeks shortcuts, patterns, and familiar narratives to minimize effort. Comfort provides exactly that. Comfort closes questions, ends uncertainty, and stops cognitive work. When the mind encounters a comforting explanation, stress responses decrease almost instantly. This produces relief. The relief feels physical because it is physical. The nervous system shifts from alert mode to rest mode. Heart rate slows. Muscle tension decreases. The brain interprets this shift as safety. This is why comfort feels effective immediately. It gives the body a signal that no further mental work is required. Thinking does the opposite. Thinking keeps the brain in an active state. It prevents closure. It forces the mind to hold unresolved possibilities. This sustained activation is tiring. The brain experiences it as labor, not curiosity. The energy-saving mechanism pushes against this labor by creating resistance. People feel this resistance as boredom, irritation, or avoidance. The brain prefers answers that feel right over answers that require work. This preference is not about intelligence, it is about efficiency. Cognitive shortcuts allow fast decisions with minimal cost. Comforting beliefs are shortcuts. They reduce complexity into simple explanations. Simple explanations require less processing and therefore feel easier to accept. This ease is misinterpreted as truth. When something feels easy, the brain assumes it is correct. Thinking challenges this assumption. It slows everything down. It introduces doubt. Doubt keeps the brain working without reward. This lack of immediate payoff makes thinking feel unrewarding. The brain evolved to respond strongly to immediate benefits and weakly to delayed ones. Comfort offers immediate emotional benefit. Thinking offers delayed intellectual benefit. The nervous system prioritizes the immediate. This is why comfort wins quickly and repeatedly. The energy-saving mechanism also explains why repetition feels soothing. Repeated ideas require less processing each time they are encountered. Familiarity reduces neural activation. The brain spends less energy on known patterns. This reduction feels calming. New ideas require new neural pathways. New pathways demand energy. This demand feels like effort. Effort feels unpleasant unless it is rewarded. The brain therefore resists unfamiliar truths, even when they are accurate. This resistance is automatic, not chosen. Thinking is also exhausting because it often triggers emotional conflict. When new information contradicts existing beliefs, the brain experiences cognitive dissonance. This dissonance is stressful. It forces the mind to reconcile inconsistency. Reconciliation requires either changing beliefs or rejecting information. Both options cost energy. Rejecting information is cheaper. Changing beliefs requires restructuring mental models, which is one of the most energy-intensive tasks the brain can perform. The brain avoids this task unless forced. This avoidance feels like mental fatigue. People say they are tired when what they really mean is that their beliefs are under strain. Comfort avoids this strain by protecting existing models. The energy-saving mechanism also favors automation. Once beliefs are established, they guide behavior automatically. Automatic behavior requires minimal conscious thought. Thinking interrupts automation. It demands conscious engagement. Conscious engagement drains energy. This is why routines feel restful and reflection feels tiring. The brain prefers autopilot. Comfort keeps the mind on autopilot. Thinking switches it off. This is why comfort feels like relief and thinking feels like work. The brain is not lazy, it is economical. It optimizes for survival, not enlightenment. Deep thinking was never necessary for most of human history. Survival required obedience, pattern recognition, and quick decisions, not abstract analysis. The modern world demands thinking, but the brain still operates on ancient priorities. This mismatch explains why people feel exhausted by thought, but refreshed by certainty. Comfort aligns with the brain's energy-saving design. Thinking challenges it. This is why comfort acts instantly. It shuts down effort. The relief is immediate because the brain stops working as hard. This is also why thinking must be learned, trained, and sustained. It does not happen naturally or effortlessly. It requires overriding instinctive efficiency. The human brain is built to rest in certainty, not to live in questioning. Doubt fractures society because it interrupts shared certainty, and shared certainty is the glue that holds collective life together. When doubt enters a community, it does not remain an isolated mental act. It spreads. Doubt introduces questions, and questions invite multiple answers. Once multiple answers exist, agreement weakens. This is how doubt creates divergence. Where there was once a single accepted narrative, there are now competing interpretations. This divergence produces disagreement, and disagreement transforms passive unity into active tension. When people no longer agree on what is true, they no longer agree on what should be done. Actions lose coordination. Decisions slow down. Trust erodes. Each individual begins to evaluate not only ideas but also intentions. This evaluation creates suspicion. Suspicion is the seed of conflict. Fikir-ayrılığı is not merely intellectual. It quickly becomes emotional because beliefs are tied to identity. When someone challenges a belief, they are perceived as challenging the person who holds it. This personalization of ideas turns disagreement into confrontation. What began as a question becomes a threat to belonging. As sides form, dialogue hardens into opposition. Conflict emerges because groups begin to defend positions rather than explore truth. Defense requires loyalty. Loyalty requires boundaries. Boundaries divide. The more doubt circulates, the more divisions multiply. These divisions destabilize order because order depends on predictability. Predictability requires shared expectations. When expectations diverge, behavior becomes inconsistent. Inconsistent behavior creates chaos at the social level. Rules lose authority because their justification is questioned. Authority weakens because it relies on belief in legitimacy. When legitimacy is doubted, compliance declines. This decline forces power to respond. If persuasion fails, control increases. Control escalates tension. Tension escalates conflict. Conflict disrupts daily functioning. Economic exchange, social cooperation, and mutual trust begin to erode. At this stage, doubt is no longer seen as curiosity. It is labeled disruption. The community begins to associate doubt with instability. This association becomes emotional rather than rational. People remember the discomfort, not the intellectual value of questioning. They remember arguments, fear, and division. They conclude that doubt caused the breakdown, even if the underlying problem was fragility. This memory shapes future behavior. Societies learn to fear doubt because they associate it with conflict and collapse. This fear becomes institutionalized. Norms develop that discourage questioning. Education emphasizes acceptance. Tradition is elevated above inquiry. Silence is rewarded. Those who question are framed as irresponsible, divisive, or dangerous. This framing protects order by suppressing the source of disruption. Doubt is treated as a contagious threat rather than a corrective force. The irony is that doubt does not create conflict from nothing. It reveals existing fractures. When beliefs are shallow or imposed, they cannot withstand questioning. Doubt exposes this weakness, but societies blame the exposure rather than the fragility. This blame shifts responsibility away from systems and onto individuals. The questioner becomes the problem. This allows society to preserve its structure without reform. But the cost is stagnation. Without doubt, errors persist. Falsehoods harden. Injustice becomes normalized. However, from the perspective of immediate stability, this cost feels abstract. The immediate threat is disorder. Conflict is visible, painful, and disruptive. Stability is prioritized over accuracy. This priority explains why societies equate doubt with danger. Doubt leads to disagreement. Disagreement leads to conflict. Stability is often mistaken for safety because stability creates the feeling of control, even when that control is artificial. Stability functions as a psychological illusion of security. It tells people that the world is predictable, that tomorrow will resemble today, and that the rules governing life are fixed. This feeling reduces anxiety because the human brain equates predictability with survival. When systems appear stable, people feel protected, even if the foundation of that stability is false. Truth does not always offer this reassurance. Truth can reveal fragility, change, and risk. In contrast, stability promises continuity, which feels safer than accuracy. This is why societies repeatedly prioritize stability over truth. The immediate emotional comfort of order outweighs the abstract value of correctness. When a belief system creates calm and coordination, it is treated as successful regardless of its truthfulness. This is the point where stability becomes more important than reality. The question shifts from, is this true, to does this work? If it works to maintain order, it is protected. The mechanism, if everyone believes it, it must be right, emerges naturally from this logic. When a belief is widely shared, it gains social weight. The number of believers becomes a substitute for evidence. Consensus is mistaken for correctness because consensus reduces friction. When everyone agrees, conflict diminishes, and the absence of conflict feels like proof. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. The more people believe something, the more legitimate it appears. The more legitimate it appears, the more people accept it. This is not rational validation, it is emotional reinforcement. The brain interprets social agreement as safety. Humans evolved to trust the group because isolation meant danger. When many people accept the same belief, the individual feels protected by alignment. Doubting that belief threatens alignment, and alignment is tied to belonging. This is why collective belief becomes resistant to challenge, even when evidence contradicts it. Civilization amplifies this effect. In groups, individual critical thinking weakens. People look to others for cues on what to think and how to feel. This reliance increases under uncertainty. When individuals are unsure, they copy the group. This copying reduces personal responsibility and cognitive effort. If the group believes, it must be safe. This dynamic suppresses doubt not through force, but through conformity. Doubt becomes socially uncomfortable before it becomes forbidden. People feel pressure to agree, to nod, to remain silent. This silence reinforces the appearance of consensus. The appearance of consensus reinforces belief. The cycle tightens. Dissent feels like disruption, not contribution. The group begins to associate doubt with threat because doubt introduces instability into a system that relies on harmony. Civilization does not require malicious intent. It operates automatically. The desire to belong overrides the desire to be correct. Individuals who doubt feel tension between honesty and acceptance. Most choose acceptance. This choice gradually erases visible doubt. When doubt disappears from view, a belief appears unanimous. This unanimity strengthens the illusion of truth. At this stage, truth becomes irrelevant. What matters is cohesion. Stability feels like success, even when it rests on falsehood. This is why societies can persist for long periods within collective illusions. The illusion produces calm, and calm is interpreted as safety. But this safety is fragile. It depends on suppressing doubt rather than resolving contradictions. When reality eventually intrudes, the collapse is sudden and violent because the system was never truly secure. The illusion of stability delays reckoning but magnifies its cost. This is the tragedy of prioritizing stability over truth. It feels protective in the short term, but it builds vulnerability underneath. By silencing doubt, groups protect order, but sacrifice resilience. Truth challenges stability, but also strengthens it when integrated. Stability that fears truth is not stability. It is stagnation disguised as peace. And mass psychology ensures that this disguise feels convincing, because when everyone believes the same illusion, it feels safer than standing alone with reality. A lie has a unifying function because it provides a shared emotional and symbolic space where individuals can align without confronting complexity. When people believe the same false narrative, they gain a sense of togetherness that truth often cannot provide. Truth differentiates. Lies homogenize. They smooth over differences in experience, interest, and perspective by offering a single story everyone can inhabit. This shared story reduces friction because people no longer need to negotiate meaning continuously. They know what is expected, what is valued, and how events should be interpreted. This predictability creates cohesion. The lie becomes a common language that allows large groups to function as if they were unified minds. This is especially powerful in uncertain or traumatic conditions where coordination matters more than accuracy. Hope, lies, and grand narratives amplify this effect. Hope lies promise that suffering has purpose, that loss will be redeemed, or that the future will justify the present. These lies are emotionally potent because they transform pain into endurance. When people believe that hardship is temporary or meaningful, they can tolerate conditions that would otherwise be unbearable. Grand narratives provide a sense of direction. They explain where the group came from, why it exists, and where it is going. This directional certainty calms anxiety because it frames uncertainty as part of a larger plan. Individuals feel smaller but safer inside these stories. They trade personal doubt for collective reassurance. This trade feels beneficial because belonging reduces fear. Hope lies are rarely exposed immediately because they operate on future promises. The future cannot be verified in the present. This delay protects the lie from falsification. As long as hope remains plausible, the lie continues to function. This is one reason lies endure over long periods. They are not tested against immediate reality, but against expectation. When expectations are deferred, the lie survives. Another reason lies last is repetition. Repeated narratives become familiar. Familiarity breeds acceptance. The brain equates familiarity with safety. The more often a lie is repeated, the less effort it requires to process, and the less resistance it encounters. Eventually, it feels natural rather than deceptive. This naturalization makes the lie invisible. People stop recognizing it as a claim and start experiencing it as reality. Lies also persist because they are embedded in institutions, rituals, and symbols. Once a lie is institutionalized, it no longer depends on individual belief alone. It is reinforced by education, media, tradition, and social reward structures. People are rewarded for affirming it and punished for challenging it. This asymmetry ensures longevity. The social cost of doubt becomes higher than the cognitive cost of belief. This discourages questioning even when contradictions appear. The lie's social glue function becomes especially clear here. It holds people together by defining insiders and outsiders. Those who accept the lie belong. Those who reject it threaten unity. This boundary strengthens group identity. Identity fuels loyalty. Loyalty protects the lie. The lie acts like social adhesive. It fills gaps between individuals by providing shared meaning. Shared meaning reduces isolation. Isolation is feared, therefore the adhesive is valued. The lie also simplifies moral complexity. Grand narratives often frame the group as righteous and the world as ordered. This moral clarity reduces internal conflict and moral ambiguity. People feel justified in their roles. This justification maintains cooperation. Cooperation maintains stability. Stability reinforces the lie. This circular reinforcement explains longevity. Lies also adapt. They evolve subtly to accommodate new realities without collapsing. Core symbols remain while interpretations shift. This flexibility allows the lie to absorb contradictions rather than be destroyed by them. Truth is rigid, lies are elastic. This elasticity makes lies resilient over time. When evidence threatens them, they are reinterpreted, not abandoned. This preserves cohesion while adjusting surface details. The social glue function of lies is therefore dynamic, not static. It binds by adapting. Finally, lies endure because they meet needs. Truth often ignores. They provide comfort, belonging, identity, and hope. Truth offers none of these guarantees. Lies promise emotional shelter in a chaotic world. As long as societies prioritize emotional cohesion over factual precision, lies will continue to unite people more effectively than truth. The cost is delayed, but the benefit is immediate, and humans consistently choose the immediate. This is why lies do not merely deceive. They connect, they organize, they stabilize. They become the invisible adhesive holding societies together, long after their falsity is suspected but rarely confronted. In the age of information overload, doubt takes on a new and exhausting form. Unlike the past, where information was scarce, today uncertainty comes not from lack of data, but from excess. The human mind is flooded with facts, claims, studies, opinions, and contradictions. This constant exposure overwhelms cognitive capacity. The brain is forced to filter rapidly, and filtering requires criteria. When everything is available, certainty becomes harder, not easier. This abundance turns doubt into chronic fatigue. People are no longer unsure because they know too little, but because they know too much without a clear hierarchy of trust. This creates mental paralysis. Instead of motivating inquiry, information overload pushes the mind toward avoidance. This is why many people actively flee from facts. Facts demand attention, context, and effort. They require comparison and evaluation. They often contradict comforting beliefs. In a saturated environment, each new fact feels like an additional burden rather than a solution. The brain responds by disengaging. This disengagement is misinterpreted as apathy, but it is actually self-protection. To cope, people simplify. They choose narratives that reduce complexity rather than increase understanding. This is where algorithms enter. Algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, not truth. They learn what calms, confirms, and comforts each user. When a person avoids challenging information, the algorithm adapts by feeding them familiar content. This creates an echo chamber where doubt is minimized and reassurance is constant. Rahat yalanlar thrive in this environment because they are emotionally efficient. They do not demand effort. They align with existing beliefs. They provide instant clarity in a confusing world. Algorithms amplify these lies because they generate comfort, and comfort keeps users engaged. This feedback loop strengthens falsehoods while marginalizing complexity. Facts that challenge identity or require nuance perform poorly. They are ignored, buried, or reframed. The result is a digital environment optimized for emotional ease rather than intellectual rigor. Modern humans are not deceived passively. They participate actively in this system. By choosing comfort repeatedly, they train algorithms to deliver it. The algorithm reflects preference, not reality. This makes responsibility diffuse. People blame technology, but technology mirrors desire. The modern choice is therefore subtle. It is not between truth and lies in the abstract. It is between discomfort and relief. In an information-rich world, truth often feels heavy. It requires slowing down, thinking critically, and tolerating uncertainty. Lies feel light. They move quickly. They offer conclusions without process. The nervous system prefers speed and certainty, especially under stress. This pushes modern individuals toward curated realities where doubt is minimized. This choice has consequences as people retreat from facts. Public discourse fragments. Shared reality weakens. When everyone lives inside personalized narratives, coordination becomes difficult. Trust erodes because there is no common ground. This paradox defines the modern condition. Information has never been more accessible, yet understanding has never been more contested. Doubt does not disappear, it is displaced. It turns inward as anxiety or outward as hostility. People become suspicious not because they question deeply, but because they no longer know what to trust. The algorithmic comfort that removes doubt in the short term increases it in the long term by eroding shared standards of truth. Modern humans stand at a crossroads. They can accept the discomfort of critical engagement or surrender to curated ease. The choice is rarely conscious. It is made click by click, preference by preference. The system rewards ease and punishes effort. This shapes behavior subtly but powerfully. The modern individual often chooses comfort not out of ignorance, but exhaustion. In a world that never stops talking, choosing silence feels like relief. And in that silence, comfortable lies speak the loudest. This is the dilemma of the information age. Doubt is everywhere, but rarely confronted. Facts are abundant, but often avoided. Algorithms offer peace at the price of clarity, and modern humanity must decide whether it wants to be comforted endlessly or challenged occasionally. Because in an age where information is infinite, the most radical act is not knowing more, but choosing to face what is true even when it disrupts the comfort we have carefully built. When comfort collapses, the illusion that protected the mind disappears, and reality forces its way back into awareness. Rahatluk only works while it can absorb fear, delay consequences, and maintain the appearance of stability. Once that stability breaks, the emotional shelter fails. People suddenly realize that the beliefs and narratives they relied on can no longer explain what is happening. This moment is disorienting because it removes both certainty and safety. At this stage, denial often appears first. Individuals and societies attempt to restore comfort by repeating old stories more aggressively. But when reality continues to contradict those stories, repetition loses power. This is when anxiety rises sharply. The nervous system senses that familiar explanations no longer reduce fear. When comfort stops calming, the mind becomes restless. This restlessness opens the door to doubt. Buran creates conditions where doubt returns not as curiosity, but as necessity. In stable times, people avoid doubt because it feels threatening. In crisis, doubt becomes unavoidable because existing answers fail. When systems break, questions emerge naturally. People ask why promises failed, why authorities were wrong, and why suffering continues despite belief. This questioning is not philosophical at first. It is practical. The mind searches for explanations that work. Crisis shifts priority from emotional comfort to functional truth. When survival or dignity is at stake, illusion becomes useless. This is why periods of collapse are always followed by waves of questioning. Doubt returns because belief has lost its calming function. The brain no longer receives relief from certainty, so it looks elsewhere. Buran also weakens social pressure. When everyone feels insecure, conformity loses its reward. Belonging no longer guarantees safety. This reduces the fear of standing alone. As collective confidence erodes, individuals feel freer to question. What was once taboo becomes discussable. This is how doubt re-enters public space, not because people suddenly become brave, but because comfort has stopped working. History shows that major turning points follow this pattern. Empires fall when their narratives no longer explain reality. Religious authority weakens when promised order collapses. Political systems fracture when stability disappears. In every case, the common element is failure of reassurance. Once a system cannot provide safety or meaning, its protection dissolves. This dissolution exposes contradictions that were previously ignored. People begin to see gaps between promise and outcome. These gaps fuel skepticism. The shared illusion breaks into fragments and collective agreement weakens. This is why crises produce intellectual movement. New philosophies, new sciences, and new social models often emerge after collapse. The breakdown of comfort creates space for alternative explanations. Tarikste dönüş noktalarının ortak cehdi is not sudden enlightenment, but sustained discomfort. When suffering persists, people tolerate uncertainty better because certainty has already failed. The fear of doubt becomes smaller than the pain of illusion. This reverses the usual hierarchy. Truth becomes more attractive than comfort because comfort no longer exists. Another shared feature of turning points is loss of trust. Trust in authority, tradition, and inherited belief erodes. This erosion frees the individual mind. Once trust breaks, obedience weakens. Without obedience, questions multiply. This multiplication accelerates change. Crisis also exposes power structures. When stability collapses, the mechanisms that maintained order become visible. People see how narratives were used to control behavior. This visibility produces anger, and anger fuels rejection of old beliefs. This emotional energy drives transformation. The return of doubt is therefore not calm or orderly. It is turbulent. Doubt arrives mixed with fear, grief, and rage. But it also brings clarity. It forces re-evaluation of assumptions that were previously protected by comfort. History repeats this cycle. Stability produces belief. Belief suppresses doubt. Doubt threatens order. Order collapses under pressure. Comfort fails. Doubt returns. And from that doubt, new structures eventually form. The tragedy is that once new stability is established, the cycle begins again. New comforts appear. New illusions harden. New doubts are suppressed. This is why history moves in waves rather than straight lines. Humanity does not permanently choose truth over comfort. It oscillates between them. When comfort works, it is chosen. When it collapses, truth is sought. Crisis does not make humans wiser. It makes them honest, temporarily. And that temporary honesty is enough to reshape the world before comfort returns in a new form. The lesson of history is not that humans learn permanently, but that reality eventually forces learning when illusion can no longer carry the weight placed upon it. This is why doubt always returns after collapse, not as a preference, but as a response to necessity. Doubt is frightening because it removes certainty, and certainty is the psychological foundation of safety. The human mind seeks firm ground to stand on, and doubt takes that ground away. When a person doubts, they no longer know what is solid, what is reliable, or what will hold. This loss creates anxiety because the brain equates uncertainty with danger. Doubt opens unanswered questions, and unanswered questions feel like exposure. Without certainty, the individual must tolerate not knowing, and not knowing feels like vulnerability. This is why doubt is experienced as threat rather than curiosity. It destabilizes identity, belief, and belonging all at once. It forces the individual to face the possibility that their understanding of the world may be incomplete or wrong. This confrontation is emotionally painful because it removes the comfort of inherited answers. Doubt also creates responsibility. Once certainty disappears, the individual must decide for themselves. There is no authority to hide behind. This burden is heavy because decisions made under uncertainty have consequences. Doubt therefore feels risky. It demands courage without offering reassurance. Societies fear doubt for the same reason individuals do. It disrupts coordination. Shared belief allows groups to act together. Doubt fractures that unity. When unity weakens, order feels threatened. This makes doubt appear dangerous not because it destroys truth, but because it challenges stability. This fear is amplified by history because moments of widespread doubt often coincided with conflict, collapse, or transformation. Societies remember the chaos, not the progress. Doubt becomes associated with disorder rather than growth. This association persists even when doubt is the source of renewal. Yet doubt is essential because without it, learning stops. Doubt is the mechanism that exposes error. When beliefs go unquestioned, they harden into dogma. Dogma resists correction and allows falsehood to persist. Doubt interrupts this process. It forces re-evaluation. It asks whether assumptions still match reality. This questioning is the starting point of understanding. Doubt is also essential for freedom. Without doubt, obedience becomes automatic. People follow rules without examining purpose or consequence. This makes individuals predictable but not autonomous. Doubt restores agency. It allows the individual to choose consciously rather than comply reflexively. This choice is uncomfortable, but it is necessary for genuine responsibility. Doubt also protects against manipulation. Systems of power rely on certainty to maintain control. When people stop questioning, authority no longer needs justification. Doubt reintroduces accountability. It asks why rules exist and who benefits from them. This makes doubt threatening to power but vital to justice. Historically, every major advance in knowledge began with doubt. Old explanations failed. New questions emerged. This pattern shows that doubt is not destructive by nature. It is disruptive only to what is fragile or false. The pain of doubt comes from transition. It dismantles before it rebuilds. This gap between collapse and reconstruction feels unbearable to many. This is why people retreat from doubt too early. They feel the loss, but not yet the gain. The importance of doubt lies beyond this discomfort. Doubt clears space. It removes illusions that no longer serve. It prepares the mind for deeper understanding, but it offers no immediate reward. This delayed benefit makes doubt unpopular in the short term, but indispensable in the long term. Doubt is frightening because it strips away comfort, but it is necessary because comfort without examination leads to stagnation. Doubt forces contact with reality even when reality is uncomfortable. It prevents blind acceptance. It keeps belief flexible and knowledge alive. The human condition is defined by this tension. Doubt threatens peace, but preserves truth. It destabilizes, but also renews. It is feared because it feels like loss, but it is vital because it makes growth possible. Without doubt, societies remain calm but blind. With doubt, they suffer, but they see. And seeing, despite its cost, is the only path to understanding what truly is. This war never ends because it is not a conflict between two ideas, but between two human needs that can never fully replace each other. The war continues because humans simultaneously crave comfort and truth, and these desires pull in opposite directions. Comfort seeks certainty, belonging, and emotional safety. Truth demands uncertainty, change, and responsibility. As long as humans fear uncertainty and need meaning, this tension cannot be resolved. During stable periods, comfort dominates. Belief, habit, and shared narratives provide peace and coordination. Doubt is suppressed because it feels unnecessary and dangerous. But comfort is fragile. It depends on reality behaving as expected. When reality breaks promises, comfort collapses and truth becomes urgent. Crisis forces questioning. Questions weaken belief, structures crack, reason rises. This shift feels like liberation, but it brings anxiety, conflict, and loss of meaning. As reason expands, humans begin to feel exposed. Truth explains how things work, but does not explain why they should matter. This emptiness becomes heavy. Over time, people seek new narratives, new beliefs, new comforts. The cycle resets. This is why the war never ends. Each side solves a problem the other creates. Belief provides meaning but resists correction. Reason provides clarity but strips reassurance. When belief rules alone, ignorance grows. When reason rules alone, emptiness spreads. Humans oscillate between these states because neither is sufficient by itself. The war is also sustained by human psychology. The brain is wired to avoid uncertainty and seek closure. But reality is complex and constantly changing. This mismatch ensures perpetual tension. Whenever certainty hardens, it eventually breaks under evidence. Whenever questioning expands, it eventually produces fatigue and fear. Societies respond by swinging back toward comfort. Power reinforces this cycle. Authority prefers belief because belief is controllable. Reason threatens control by demanding justification. When reason weakens authority, authority pushes back. This creates recurring conflict across history. Individuals experience the same struggle internally. At times they want to know, at times they want peace. They move between questioning and believing depending on stress, safety, and circumstance. This personal oscillation mirrors collective history. The war never ends because there is no final victory. Truth cannot eliminate the need for meaning. Meaning cannot eliminate the need for accuracy. Any system that claims final resolution becomes dogma and invites doubt. Any system that rejects meaning becomes unbearable and invites belief. This guarantees repetition. The war is not a failure of humanity, it is a feature of being human. To exist consciously is to live between explanation and purpose, between how and why. This space is uncomfortable and unstable, but unavoidable. The conflict persists because humans keep rebuilding certainty and then breaking it again. They construct shelters of belief, then outgrow them. They demand truth, then retreat from its weight. This endless motion drives history forward in cycles rather than straight lines. The war never ends because humans do not change their fundamental nature. They remain fragile, curious, fearful, and hopeful at the same time. As long as humans need both understanding and reassurance, faith and reason will continue to collide. This collision is not meant to be resolved. It is meant to be endured. And perhaps the real tragedy is not that the war never ends, but that humans keep searching for a final answer when the struggle itself is the condition of being alive. This story does not end with a victory because history has shown that there is no final winner in the struggle between comfort and truth, belief and doubt, faith and reason. Humanity moves forward by swinging between them, never settling permanently on one side. When comfort dominates, societies feel stable but blind. When doubt rises, understanding grows, but peace weakens. This cycle is not a failure. It is the rhythm of human consciousness. We build certainties to survive, then question them to progress. We accept stories to belong, then break them to understand. This tension has shaped every civilization, every collapse, and every renewal. The mistake is not choosing comfort or choosing doubt. The mistake is believing one can replace the other forever. Truth without meaning becomes unbearable. Comfort without truth becomes fragile. This is why the war never ends, and why it should not. Peace does not come from silencing doubt, nor from destroying belief. It comes from recognizing why both exist. Doubt is frightening, but it keeps reality honest. Belief is comforting, but it keeps humanity moving when understanding is not enough. The danger begins when one demands absolute power. When belief forbids questioning, stagnation follows. When reason denies meaning, emptiness spreads. History warns us of both. As individuals and as societies, we are repeatedly asked the same question: not which side is right, but when to question and when to endure. Wisdom is not choosing certainty forever. It is knowing when comfort has become illusion and when doubt has become escape. This video does not ask you to abandon belief, nor to worship doubt. It asks you to notice when you are choosing comfort over truth and when you are avoiding truth because it feels heavy. The future will not be shaped by those who believe everything, nor by those who doubt everything, but by those who can carry uncertainty without collapsing into fear. As long as humans remain conscious beings, searching for meaning while living in a complex world, this struggle will continue. And perhaps that is not a curse, but the price of being aware. Because a humanity without belief would lose its reason to endure, and a humanity without doubt would lose its chance to grow. This is the space we live in, between certainty and questioning, between peace and truth. And learning to live in that space may be the closest thing to wisdom history has ever offered.